Hi. I know I'm just a regular guy that doesn't have any fancy YouTube stuff, but I want to say something, and I want you to listen to me very carefully. Anybody that's interested in our past or UFOs or anything like that, I've done research on this for years. I'm not saying I'm smarter or better than anybody else, but this is what I've come up with by the process of elimination. First, UFOs may not be from another solar system or galaxy. They might not have to travel this far. If you look at the pictures of UFOs that were found as early as the 50s and up till now, you see that they've evolved. The shape of them has evolved. And what they can do over time has evolved as far as flying. That leads me to believe one of two things. Either A, they've come from a place in our own Earth or underneath the ocean, and so they don't fly for many galaxies here, to get here. Where they're from, I'm not sure. But B is something that I believe is true. They may be us from our future and coming back here to look at us and try to figure out how to help us through certain catastrophic events. I believe the cattle mutilations may be them coming back here to try to figure out how to help us through things like pandemics. I also believe that big meteorite that was going to hit Russia a few years back, if you look at it carefully, something came from behind that meteorite and blew it up so that it wouldn't become a catastrophic event. I believe that were UFOs to save us. So if they're trying to save us, who are they and why are they trying to do that? A, we may be an experiment for them, or B, it may be us from the future, and they're trying to help us out that way. Also, if you look at the pyramids, the building of that and how they built it is not something that you would forget through history. I think that'd be something that would be pretty important, and you wouldn't lose that bit of information. But somehow we have. How do I think we've lost that? I think we're not the first civilization that have come this far. I think our timeline that was given us is a lie, and I believe that we've had at least 4 civilizations that have come this far as technology goes. And I believe a prior civilization built the pyramids and a lot of these other giant monolithic things that we can still find now that were, like I said, from a prior civilization. That's the only thing that really makes sense to me. It could have been UFOs, yes, but it was such a long time ago. Something happened where everything was forgotten. This technology was forgotten. What I believe has happened, during that timeline, an event happened, something like maybe the Great Flood or Noah, or even prior to that, it decimated this world and wiped out just about everyone. A lot of people survived, not all of them, and maybe not the ones that had that technological info to share and bring forward on how they did it. That makes sense to me, because whenever we get in a great war or something big ever happens, look at Germany. We took all their top scientists, not because they were nice guys. We wanted that information. So I think information was very important to everyone in history. I mean, the bad guys, unfortunately, when they would take over a certain country, first thing they would do would be erase their history and replace it with their own. But if you look at civilizations that live now on this earth, the ones that have been around the longest, that have an interrupted timeline, like the Buddhists, the Indians, certain Asians, their timeline says something very different than what we're taught. Also, and look back on this, like I always say, do your own homework. The time when we were told about Noah and the building of the Great Ark, do you realize and understand there's absolute proof that just about on every other continent, they have a story about that, how someone in their history was told there was going to be a great flood, and they needed to build an ark and gather 2 of everything. In just about every other history, it's the same story, different names, but the point is all the same. So who told them this? I'm a big thing on history. I just get stuck on, how do we do this? Especially the pyramids. How do we build it? I think the pyramids are a lot older than what we're told. I think all those megalithic structures are all older than we're told. And if you look at that, it just makes me believe that there was a prior civilization that were more advanced, or as advanced at least as than we are. It's the only thing that makes sense. Unfortunately, a lot of these scientists stuff, when they get these points in their mind, like that guy over there that discovers all the the mummies and all that stuff, whatever he writes down, whatever he says, that's it. Can't be changed. Unfortunately, when these things come into play and it challenges their belief, they just wipe it off and write it off. No, it can't be done. And there's been plenty of professors and archaeologists that have lost their careers because they don't believe in what their timeline is. And they stood up and said, hey, wait a minute, this doesn't work. This doesn't fit in. Because if that doesn't fit in, it has to change everything. And they're just not willing to let that happen. But I think it's very important for everyone to look at these timelines to see what happened, because history always repeats itself. If we could figure out what happened, if there was 3 or 4 civilizations before us, if we could see what happened during their demise, the odds are our demise is going to happen one of those ways. We're going to have a pretty good idea of how it happened. I think right now the powers that be know something big's coming. They know something huge is going to happen, because all of a sudden, if you look at it, all these people that are millionaires and billionaires, a few years ago, they all started building bunkers. Why? Jeff Bezos has a place where he has a giant bunker underground where he can live for months or possibly years. Right next to it, he has a rocket that could go into space. Why would he have something like that? It's not for fun, especially these two things next to each other. So I believe they know something is going to happen. We're not going to be told. And like in a lot of the movies, when it comes right down to it, right before it, they're going to call it a lottery, but I don't think it'll be a lottery. I think they're going to take all the most important minds in the world that would be related to restarting a civilization and make sure that they survive. But I believe something big is going to happen. Whether it's a huge CME, like in 1890s, and we had the Carrington event, which would pretty much wipe us out. No electricity, no nothing, set us back. This would be a reset. Asteroid, which has happened before. Look at our moon. It's been peppered with asteroids forever. That is definitely something that's going to happen again. You look at pole shift. They told us for a long time that if a pole shift happens, it's going to be no big deal. We don't have to worry about it. Now they realize, or they're telling us, that if a pole shift happens, the Earth is spinning constantly at 1,000 miles an hour. If a pole shift happens, it'll happen within a day. And when that happens, all of the plates, which are all the countries and all the land masses, will pretty much almost move around or possibly flip over. There'll be waves as high as 100 miles high, like happened before. Look at a desert. What's it look like to you? To me, it looks like an ocean with no water. They've recently found whale bones underneath the sand in the desert. Where did that come from? A lot of these things they find in the desert are buried by sand. How did that happen? Look at the Sphinx by the pyramids. That was all weathered due to water erosion, not wind. Severe water erosion. So when did that happen? There was a catastrophic event. There was a great flood that changed a lot of this. You look under a lot of these oceans, and they find huge temples, monolithic cities that are buried underneath the ocean. And one question I have is, why do we know more about the moon than we know what's underneath our own oceans? Why? Don't you think we should find out all we could about this planet before we go looking to try to go someplace else in space? And if you don't think they're lying to us or holding back, NASA's been using the same rockets since the 50s, okay? Launching them up into space, blowing all the boosters off, using all this fuel, blowing everything away, coming down on parachutes and landing in the ocean. Elon Musk comes along, makes a rocket that goes into space and lands. It's reusable. He did it, but NASA couldn't for over, 70 years. Come on. They know it. Here's what I feel. Something big is going to happen. They know about it. They're not telling us. But it seems like something big is going to happen. And they're slowly but surely, like every other time, dripping information on us. They've recently said, the TikTok videos, they're not saying it was really UFOs or aliens. They're just saying it's UAPs. We don't know what it is, but they're saying it's not ours. I believe it could be ours because it's something that they reverse engineered or came back from. But where did they get that reverse engineering from? From what? You know, certain things, don't make sense, especially our timeline. I don't believe in our timeline like they're telling us. We were cavemen, hunter-gatherers, fire, the wheel, all that stuff in the timeline they gave us. No. There's been things they found where carvings have found where you see humans living along with dinosaurs. Come on. These weren't cartoons that they were carving in the walls. This was true. And if you look at something where any big catastrophic event happened, especially like a flood or even time, what's the only thing that would be left? Usually things left in stone. They're the things that'll be left the longest that they could see. We see a lot of these things. There's been so much weathering and deterioration of them. We can't even imagine what they looked like when they were first built. Look into your history. This is very important. Just to find out, if you're like me, what happened in the past. But I want to tell you something. I believe that the powers that be know something big is going to happen and they're not telling us. All their signs show it. The way they're all gathering money, hoarding money, making money, all this big, horrible, recent event that happened. And just, like stashing it away. And they're all building bunkers. Look into it. Even the Kardashians are building bunkers. Come on. They're not the brightest balls on the string, but they have lots of money and they know people who may know things. I wouldn't want to live in a world where all these rich people survive the Kardashians, but, I believe they know that something big's going to happen. They're not telling us about it. Please do your homework. Please look into these things. And please look into our timeline. And let me ask you something. The way we build skyscrapers today, if something happened, or even if something just didn't happen, like they're saying, you think we'd forget how to do it? Or there'd be nobody around that says, hey, how do we do that? Washington Monument and all that stuff. Someday, if there's another catastrophic event, there may be another civilization that looks at those like we look at the pyramids and say, how did we do that? But it wasn't them who did it. Anyway, I hope you look into things like I did and come up with your own conclusions. Do your own homework. It'll be very interesting, and I think you'll be surprised at what you find out. Mark my words. Within the next 5 to 10 years, something major is going to happen. Something major. And look at the Carrington event. Back in the 1890s, we didn't have a lot of electricity. But when that CME came off, nobody knew it, nobody heard it, there was no bright light or anything. It just fried all the electrical system that we had. Fortunately, back then, we didn't have a lot of it. But it just still fried it. Imagine if that happened today. No electricity. You wouldn't hear about anything. Anything with a computer, electronics would be fried. Cars wouldn't work. ATMs wouldn't work. There'd be no gas. There'd be no trucks to deliver food. I don't know how nuclear power plants work without, electricity as far as cooling them goes. But that would be a catastrophic reset event. If we all kept our cool and worked together to restore our grid, that'd be one thing. People would lose their minds. And it would take probably at least a year or so to start to restore our basic energy grid. But what would happen in that meantime? Think about what it would mean to be no electricity. Anyway, I'm sorry this was so long. I hope you read it, share it with your friends, talk to them about it. Something's big's coming. Do your homework. Bye-bye.